Kendrick, the 90-foot square rigger was joined by the much smaller Lady Washington. Inspired by the journeys of British explorer James Cook, the Columbia expedition was a private trading venture and the first voyage round the world for the young American Republic. They were in a race against more established competitors in the Pacific. The Spanish in the south, the British ready to take over from them, the Russians in the north, and American John Ledyard coming overland across Asia and already halfway through Siberia. Headed out into the Atlantic, Captain Kendrick pointed his tiny squadron southeast toward their first stop, the islands of Cape Verde. Only one of his people had ever been to the Pacific. Kendrick would command through his experience as a sailor, his courage as a fighter and a whaler, his physical presence, and his sword.
Andy, am I really going to read all this nautical stuff?
I'm Andrew Buckley, gumshoe historian. I've been an investigator, writer, photographer, politician, and clam digger. The past isn't dead, it's all around us, found in regular, everyday places. You just need to know where to look. With a crew gathered from coastal towns in New England, we take history out of the archives and down to the street level. We check out the players, the places they lived, and hear from the people who know them best. We get dirty, we make mistakes, and we have fun. We're practicing history without a license. Hit and run. Starting our first day of production.
Our second episode.
Alex is here. Alex is here.
We're going to hit still have it running, I think. All right. Oh, we have seamless machine here, but that was fascinating. That's a really nice, grabby intro, and
Thank you.
I'm starting to get. I had sort of a deja vu about when I first heard about your project, and why I kind of gravitated toward it, and connected with you, because I think that, like you said, it's to get people excited about history, you have to use media that grabs them, that gets their attention. And this is a perfect example of that, I think.
Yeah, well, people's expectations also have changed because 10, 15 years ago when you said historical documentary, you knew what you were going to be getting, and it was generally something that you could predict on PBS, and you would see the pans across photographs or across beautiful landscapes with a narrator, a disembodied voice giving one thing or another, and to the point of which, actually, if you go and use the iMovie program on a Mac, you'll see that there is a command called Ken Burns, where you can actually click it and be able to pan across a photograph. Now, when you become a macro in a program, that shows that everybody knows it, everybody uses it, it's a shtick. And what we wanted to be able to do really is to do something different, to be able to bring, as we said, history down to the street level, that it's gritty, it's dirty. Wanted to be able to, our story involved. Yeah, get people involved, get them in the passenger seat of the car. And to be able to involve them, and so they can also identify with the people in history, so that they're not just somebody up on a pillar.
And Jay, how do you take this footage? Did they bring it to you in nice little neat folders and with all sorts of the explanations, the scene?
Number 2, yes. Andrew and Mac are very good at it.
You cracked the whip, huh?
Yeah. The first one was a little different. It was a lot of assembly, and it was all in Andrew's head, and it was just a matter of getting it out and piecing together what they wanted.
So did you have to watch just hours and hours? Because what you grabbed there in that intro is really, it really connects with the viewer. You have to, as you're watching it, you must have to just kind of have your radar on all the time for that 1-2 second.
Yeah, to a certain extent. We also we don't have a lot of extra footage, so we'll be getting certain things shot, and we might only have a few extra pieces and some B-roll that we know we want to cut in for certain sections.
Right. So, now you all went to, you and Matt Griffin, your assistant producer, went to Cape Verdi?
Well, actually,
or for the second episode?
Well, for our second episode, our first episode took place in New England because of financial constraints. We simply had to go. We were limited to where we could drive to relatively easily, and that's where a lot of the story would take place, the background. And so the first one was going to be Prelude. The second one was going to. We decided to move ahead with that, not wait for someone to come along and say, "Oh, here's a ton of money. We'd like to see that at 9 o'clock on Tuesdays." So we were going to move ahead and be able to go to Cape Verde to show that what we could do, the promise of the show, which was to get out to exotic locations.
Yeah.
And so
because you're going to have to be going around the world with that guy.
Exactly. We have to be able to work
so
together.
You got some grants, I understand?
So last year we got 3 Mass Cultural Council grants, and so we were able to use that to be able to buy tickets for the crew to go to Cape Verde.
And lavish salaries, of course.
Oh, yeah, yes. So the plan was to be able to bring my assistant director, Matt Griffin, along with our director of photography, Alex Schwartner, who actually was responsible for a great deal of the editing of the first episode, along with other members of the crew. And we had some, as we actually show in our second episode, we don't just talk about the story of the Columbia expedition. We talk about the story of ourselves following the story,
right?
As well,
which is really one of the fun things about it. It seems it makes me want to kind of follow along with you.
Yeah, it makes it very accessible, and that's what we've heard. We because of the grants that we got from the Mass Cultural Council, we were different local cultural councils. Right. We did, and we're required to do public screenings, and so that gave us great amount of feedback. Yeah. And so the episode, the first episode that we had, when we first showed it in Marshfield, improved and refined and developed so that when we showed it the last time at the South Shore Natural Science Center, the quality it increased greatly, but still the quality of the second episode, shot entirely in HD, with much better camera work, was great. But we started off, it was just Matt and myself, and our rule was simply this: leave the camera on.
Yeah.
And so we ended up with tons of footage.
Yeah, lots of stuff to sift through. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you have in your head what you want it to say eventually? It's 30 minutes, right? Or the second one is 30?
The first one came out to be 35 and a half minutes, and I think we could probably add a little bit onto that to make it a standard 42 and a half minute episode. The second one came out to just under 56 minutes, and we could probably cut a little bit from that as well. But the thing is that, and we've got plenty of footage that we shot for the first episode that we won't use until number 3, 4, 5, or whatever. The idea is to do this in 13 45-minute episodes, 45 minutes being standard for an hour.
So you do have a finite number of them planned.
Yeah, and to follow one story across a whole season rather than say what you'll find on the History Channel, which is, let me tell you about Rome in 1 hour.
In 1 hour, yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah, you just cannot get into detail. And we want to be able to get into the heads of our characters and to make them real so that you understand what their motivations might have been.
Well, it sounds like just your personal interest and passion is driving this project, as well as wanting to be a filmmaker or an author, which is what will make it successful, probably.
Well, what we found too is we as we were doing this, I mean, this is an interesting story, and it's interesting for the crew to be able to work on because nobody else knows about it, and so we're able to kind of set the tone, really. But as we've kind of established that franchise that we know the Columbia Expedition, we're going to tell the world about it, we also realized that we could then tell lots of different stories in the same approach. And so we could take other pieces of history that people don't quite know about and replicate our approach, whether that would be 3 episodes or 5
or 1. Bring them along with you. And do you have plans to do, I know we talked a little bit earlier about possibly a nonfiction book to kind of wrap this all together, or?
Well, it's funny because, of course, this started off as a nonfiction book idea, and to be able to do it as a historical travelogue, traveling from one place to another, and then it turned into a film version of that. And as we've gotten more and more attention, among other things, people have come to us at our screenings and said, would you think of doing this as a book as well? And, well, of course, that was the original idea. And so we've received some interest in being able to do that because, frankly, as it's not too difficult to bring a camera along as I'm writing this as a book, and it's certainly not that hard to be able to write it as a book once it's filmed.
Right.
So the two approaches go hand in hand. The greatest thing is that we can actually now send little video dispatches as we would be traveling along, so that by the time that we're finished with the whole route, lots of people would be able to follow what we were doing.
Yeah. A lot of independent publishers, I've talked in my role as a member of the Independent Publishers of New England, a lot of them are becoming, it's not just print, it's a media company. It's kind of, you know, it's like, for the reasons that you cited, you get your website, you get, what do you do with your website? Well, you can put video on it, you know, and pretty soon you have lots of different media involved. So. Yeah,
well, the great thing is that we can also expand upon one topic or another that people show interest in, because again, we have, for example, an interview that's 45 minutes long with a local historian in Wareham, who a few months later passed away. So we actually have the last recording of him talking in great detail about a particular part of our story. And so we can then go back and make that kind of a free little video podcast, extra content, if someone is interested in that particular thing. It doesn't have to go into the major broadcast. It doesn't. It may or may not go in the book, but it's all these little extras.
Well, it must be hard to kind of sort that stuff out too, and not just go off on every idea that you have to do a blurb about something.
You get selective in it, but you can also end up making a sword, which is one of the things we did.
Making a what?
A sword.
Sword. You made a sword?
In our second episode. So the whole story, you have all these little vignettes along the way, and you can kind of take a related detour and show someone how a sword was made. And as Andrew had pointed out, throughout the year, that they make them on the ship. You know, so you can see how they would be made on the ship.
They actually had forges on the ship.
They had a blacksmith.
Wow.
And they were doing.
Did you ever burn any ships up?
Yeah. Well, that was. I mean, you know, if you think about the guys who were on board these ships were whalers and privateers, and so you know, as privateers, they needed to have weapons handy and be able to fix them. And as whalers, I mean, they had to be able to set up the try-works to be able to do all sorts of things with fire. Yeah.
Well. It's been, I'm really looking forward to seeing both of these episodes, and they will be airing after Face the Book, so please stay tuned. And I think we have do we have another 30 seconds? 30 seconds? Yeah. Andrew, why don't you give us the encapsulated blurb of what this project is about, and we'll just wrap it up that way.
Well, this is about a group of kind of scrappy New Englanders following the first American voyage around the world that was itself crewed by a bunch of scrappy and desperate New Englanders. And so we're telling it in book form, we're telling it in video, and if anybody's interested, they can find a lot more information about what we're doing and with video clips, and with lots of pictures and all the rest at hitandrunhistory.com, and that will actually bring you to our Facebook fan page.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate both of you coming, Andrew and Jay, and we'd love to have you back to kind of update this from time to time. This is Charlotte Pierce signing out for Face the Book. Thanks for joining us.